Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Beth Megill. I am a language of dance master practitioner and teacher trainer, and this is the third episode of In Touch with LOD, as I'm starting to call it. I'm so pleased. I know, In Touch with LOD. And I have Michael Richter here today to share some of his experience with the work, which, has lasted a number of years in a number of different capacities and with various applications. So Michael Richter is another language of dance master practitioner and teacher trainer. He's an artist, educator, community builder. He's a coach and a mentor. He performs and he researches. He loves to help individuals and organizations learn and grow via dance improvisation. And he is very adept and wonderful educator, specifically in online environments and in developing different curriculum and somatic certification courses online, and works with Curriculum in Motion at Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival, just so much, and lives in Mexico, does all of this from Baja, Mexico right now. I mean, it's really, it's just so wonderful that we get to connect in this way. And I've had the joy of working with Michael and teaching with Michael in various language of dance courses, and it's just always such a joy. So I could not be more pleased to have him here today. So thank you and welcome, Michael.
Wow, exciting to be welcomed and named and called and feel my whole self being brought in. Thank you.
So our conversation today really is very casual, and we'll see where it leads, but I know you've done a bunch of research in using LOD as a tool for recuperation. So we'll get to that in for sure in just a little bit. But I would love to hear, and I would love for you to share a little bit of your LOD origin story, how you got into this work when you have, again, such an extensive and wonderful background in dance and dance education and higher degrees in improvisation and UCLA, and I mean, like, big experiences with dance in so many different capacities and somatic work. Like, how did then LOD come into it?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're asking that question because yeah, I want to speak to that, right? Because I have a non-traditional dance background. I started dancing right around when I was turning 27. I had not danced before, and I decided to take beginning modern at Santa Monica College, and and that was great. And then just started taking all the dance I could. And, mostly at a community college there, at least at that time, there were a lot of technique classes.
Yeah.
So that's what I was taking. And as a 27-year-old, there were a lot of things that were not quite connecting for me in those classes. The neurons just were not connecting the way I wanted them to. And so what happened was, sometimes I was not too happy, at the end of some of those classes. And thank goodness there was a choreography class on Fridays, and that connected, right? Because that just made sense to me that I could be looking for communication from my lived experience and my embodiment to then share and, either do as a solo or to put on other bodies. So that was a great opening. And then, yeah, I went to UCLA to do my master's in dance and right away connected with Nina Martin, amazing improvisation person. And that was so important. And also made me see with her and then with Simone. I was with both of them around 5, 6 years, Simone 14, Nina
140.
Martin. So, yeah, so really made sense to me, their work. Really made sense to me. And then I got involved with Celeste Miller at Jacob's Pillow with all the dance and community work and dance community partnerships. and started that at the same time as UCLA. So I was really growing on these lines of postmodern, improv, dance and community, what have you, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't get into language of dance until a few years later. And I got a flyer in the mail and it was like, oh, this is cool. And so I started a series of conversations with Tina Curran and with Teresa Hyland to figure out if this was the right thing for me. And
I
I
did not
just,
know that you got a flyer in the mail.
I know, it shows you how old I am, but
Well,
I
no,
must have,
no.
like who gets a flyer in the mail, right? And then that they actually call and like say, I'm interested because they get a flyer.
I meant more that like it wasn't net. It was just like happenstance, right? Like I was directed to the work, right? My notation teacher from UC Irvine, Mary Corey, when I was taking Lapa notation, and she knew that I had this passion, and she was like, "Hey, you need to take this course at LMU." I'm like, "Okay, a summer course sounds good." Like it was, but you just saw a flyer, thought it was cool. That's amazing.
Yeah. I got the flyer, and I guess I knew I was going to go to New York in the summer. I was living in LA, and I, knew I wanted to be with my dad. My stepmother was going to be away for the summer, and I was like, oh, I want to go and have a longer visit with my dad. And so I started, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do LOD or maybe I'll do the Urban Bush Women summer program. And they overlapped, so I couldn't do both. It had to be one or the other. So, I really wanted to do both. And I started to have all these phone calls to ascertain like what was going to be the right path for me. And, I would just keep saying to Tina over these long calls, and I'd say, is there enough dancing? You know, I mean, this thing that's, it looks very like heady and academic and what have you. And, I want to be dancing. I'm like, I was a very academic child and very, bookish and what have you. And I'm like, as somebody in their early 30s, I had changed and I didn't want to spend 3 weeks of my summer, with my head in a book all the time. And she's like, oh no, of course there's love. So I really need practice. I know myself. If it's a lot of lecturing and theory, I'm not going to be happy. I need us to be dancing it, to be living it and experiencing it. And she's like, yes, it is. You're going to be happy. And, and so finally, after enough talks, I was like, okay, I'm going to go for it. And the funny thing is that then I had to buy the books ahead of time. And she said, you need to have read and understood the entire book before the class starts. So it was like, oh my God. And I remember like working through the Your Move book with my dad, in the backyard and being like, Dad, I don't get this. Can you help me? Can we like dance this together to try to figure it out? Yeah. And my dad and I like trying to figure out like the cartwheeling and how, and like all this stuff. I mean, it was like,
Now,
yeah,
the book, just to clarify,
Your
was
Move.
the
Yeah.
first edition of Your Move, which is like a big textbook. This was before we had the whole foundations curriculum. So it was just like, and theory. Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, so somehow I got through as much as I got through, and then I showed up at the 92nd Street Y, and there was a lot going on in that course, and some of it, of course, spoke to me more than other parts of it. But the things that were really amazing were that here was an access to dance that I actually had always needed. Because in all those technique classes, it didn't really work for me to just watch the teacher and then imitate. Like that was not my learning style, really. It just didn't click. I was too nervous or worried about doing it right. And so I was like a half a beat behind the music because I was thinking and it was just like, it wasn't dancey a lot of the time. Sometimes, yeah, it was fine if it was simple enough and I could make it work for myself. But a lot of times I was like, no, pedagogically, for me as a learner, this is not effective to have a dancing experience. And what happened with LOD was it gave me an entryway that worked for my brain, body, spirit self because it was notated and I could read it. And it was like that logical, mathematical, verbal part of my brain that was so highly developed from so many years of working that way got to be like, yeah, I can do this. This I get. This works for me. I am a mathematical thinker. I am
Mhm.
a verbal thinker. Like I can see it on the page, bum, 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 bum. And all of a sudden, I had experiences of actually being able to do dance on the counts of music for the first time because I could see it on the score. And I didn't have to be like worrying about so much and then being behind a half a beat because I was trying to, get it all right. But like it was too much to be focusing. Like that's not really the way you can dance by just like muscling your pure grit will. Like at some point you need to release to dance. And
Yeah.
I could do that with the LOD because I had the confidence that I knew what the dance was.
I'm going to pause you just for a moment because I think there are so many different learning styles and and dance systems that are in existence, especially coming from and still in community colleges. I teach at a California community college. The majority of the classes are technique because still the majority of the classes that we would need our students to transfer into a university are technique courses. That's what they want. So then that's what we have to teach. And so but this point about observing and mimicking or observing and doing, right? I mean, that is a skill that comes so naturally to some movers, so naturally to some movers that it's almost when I've spoken to them, they're like, I can't imagine another way, right? But you're describing this absolute opposite. And there are, I'm thinking about how many dancers walked into a dance technique class, were asked to be outside of their learning style and walked right back out, right? Because they're like, that's not how I work. And somehow you had the tenacity to like stick to it. I mean, like magical, right? And not give up, and then find your inroad, and then have your inroad kind of reinforced through a different later on. It's like, oh, no wonder this is just what I needed, and it breaks my heart because I happen to naturally be able to like see and do, right? That's a skill that, but I've also been seeing and doing since I was 3, right? So 5, 3. So if I've been, that means I've been accumulating the seeing, doing, copying skill. I've been doing that for so long. I should probably be pretty good at it by now. Let's hope. But especially if for somebody coming later in life, to use the capacity of the cognitive processing, logical, analytical mind to your advantage. Like what a beautiful gift. And I just want to speak to those dancers who have the call to move but might not fit in the paradigm of watch and do. That there is this other, that there are many people probably who fall in that category. I'm sure they probably self-select out of dance regularly, is what I'm imagining. And so then our dance world gets skewed, repeat, again and again toward this see do mentality, when we are could foster a whole community through this other methodology.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're highlighting that because I think it's really empowering in terms of accessibility, right? We're talking about a way that dance can be for everyone. And language of dance is one of those ways because you can interpret a symbol that you read how your body, your heart, your mind, your spirit needs to interpret that. There's space for that.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the same with music, right? Like here I am in Mexico, with a fabulous dancer from my husband with, all the Latin rhythms. I did not grow up with those rhythms. I do not pick up on all of those musicalities and how to dance in the difference between, yeah, I kind of have salsa and cumbia maybe somewhat, but then the bachata or the merengue and like that's all brand new as a grown man, in his 40s that started with those things. And so it's really hard if you did not start as a young person. And I think the dancing is yet another one. right? And that see, mimic, do. Um, if you didn't start with that young, it
Mhm.
doesn't it doesn't necessarily connect and work later. And even, even if you were a young person who could do that, wouldn't it have been great to have had other ways of getting into dance also? Not only that one, right? So of having had a studio where there was that going on, but
Mhm.
at some point in every, class with Miss Beth, Miss Beth says, okay, great, we're going to now pull out our symbols and we're going to do this for the next 10 minutes. And, okay, and then maybe we'll go back and do some more, watch Miss Beth and, and repeat. So yeah, it feels like for me it was so important to add a whole nother piece to dance that made sense to me
Mhm.
because of who I am, and that my mission was to bring dance to people who were not usually in the group that has access, because of class or gender or race or what have you, right, or resources or anything. And so, that could be anybody, of course, but it definitely included men, and it definitely included older people, and it definitely included young people who, were not going to be going to studios because that was an expense that wasn't part of the family budget. And so, how do we offer things then that are different from a classical technique class that are going to be meaningful to all of those learners and participants in dance? And improvisation is one way, and community dance is one way, and language of dance is one way to be able to do that.
It's so fascinating. Many language of dance conversations tend to be about dance education, using language of dance for dance education, right? But even within those conversations, the majority of those conversations tend to be about using it for kids. So your research, though, is using language of dance with adults, with dance educators, as a recuperative tool. So I would love to hear how and what inspired you to repurpose kind of this tool of language of dance for that need, and how that came about and what you learned.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so glad you're asking about that. When I was in Los Angeles, I was working for many years in dance education with a number of teachers who were also dance educators in the public schools, as well as classroom teachers, as well as theater teachers, as well as visual arts teachers, and I was in the schools long enough to see that there was a lot of burnout among teachers that were working full time in public schools. Whether whether they were the dance teacher, the music teacher,
Yeah, anybody.
the classroom,
Yeah.
anybody, they were tired. They were
Mhm.
just tired and worn out. And I said, I want to make a difference because these people are like the most beautiful, generous people and what they're prepping and giving, and they're giving, 40 hours a week they're to teaching young people. And what are they getting back? They're not getting back a huge paycheck. They're not getting back a ton of societal respect. Like, you know, they're getting worn down, and they're these beautiful people that are the key to schools along with the administrators. They're the key to having that whole environment work for everybody. And so I said, I gotta do so. One thing is that, I would give yoga classes at school sites right at the end of the day for teachers so that they could, right there at the end of their day, come to a yoga class and have something for themselves that was just about following, a beautiful sequence and relaxation and all of that. But I wanted to do something that was also creative because I felt like teachers, even though they're being expressive in the classroom, they're being expressive for their students, not really for themselves. Right. So
Very
it's a
different.
different, right? It's a different kind of expressivity. And the human being has need to be expressive from our own lived experience, right?
Right. Yeah. As teachers, we're constantly modifying our impulses, creative impulses, to suit the needs of our students or to suit an educational goal, right? So, yeah, we're constantly compromising, and oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, which is great, and it's a beautiful skill that we develop. But if you're doing it all day, every day, and you're not getting any of the other, you're going to be like, up to here, and I've got to move on. I can't keep giving in this way if I'm not kind
Sure.
of getting some other needs met. And that's when I developed the pilot, and then the research study for working with largely dance educators once a week in an ongoing community class to offer language of dance as a recuperative community building kind of stewarding of the field. And it was just beautiful. LA is such a wonderfully diverse and rich community, and people came from all over. I was on the west side in Mar Vista, and I rented a preschool at night once there were no kids, and invited the dance teachers to come, and it was just so beautiful because I set up all kinds of explorations with language of dance as the structure. But
Mhm.
for them, it wasn't that then they needed to bring it back and teach their students. That was not the goal. It was not professional development about you need to get this so that then you do it right for somebody else. It was just come, play, connect, have fun, perform, and it worked. It just worked. People, they were learning something new in bite-sized chunks that was really easily accessible and really dancey. And we choreographed stuff, and we had improv structures, and we made a show after maybe 8 meetings, and had community come, and just so beautiful
So I
that language of dance could give this, right? Like the language of dance was the correct container. And yeah, I want to hear your question because I know it's going to be very stimulating. And I just feel like it's like language of dance gave the thing that we all needed of giving us something that was clear enough and confined enough that we could relax and feel safe in, but spacious enough that we could have this genuine, authentic, creative expression from ourselves.
Yes, and my comment, beautifully stated. My comment was first that you had the objective of them creating for themselves without having to take it back, and just how much of a gift that is to give a teacher. Um, because we're all doing our professional development, we're all required to do these pieces, and rightly so, to improve our pedagogy. And yet I wonder how much the impressions that we have as makers, as creators, as artists, all of that personal practice, to me, that's that's twice as likely to get into my classroom, right? When I have a transformative experience as a maker, as a performer, creator, then all of that energy that I've conjured up in the process just naturally gets emitted, right? I don't have to try to put it in anywhere because it's just become a part of me because I've been transformed in the process. So I wanted to highlight that because I think that was just such a lovely point about the nature of recuperation versus professional development. I've never made a distinction that clearly, but I think there's more to be teased apart there. And then the fact that oh yeah, and then we did like a little show 8 weeks later, and that was fun. I'm like, what? I did not expect that as part of the story. So you said that you did improvising. Can you talk us briefly through like what you did with them? You would invite them into the room. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I remembered all of it because, it was quite a number of years ago. But I certainly remember there were warm ups with our, 8 by 11 cards, sometimes, which have single symbols.
Movement alphabet cards.
Yeah, movement alphabet cards. But I remember using one of the very first scores in your move
Hmm.
and having us do some activity, improvisatory activity, where we worked in duets. and then picked something out of the improvisation to then put into the score, because that first score, it was a 3/4 score,
Hmm.
and it was, I believe, just any action and stillness.
The things you remember. It was a 3/4 score for somebody who was like a beat behind the music,
Well,
right?
exactly, but
I'm
like,
just
right, like that's fine. And I used the music that Anne, had decided on for that score. At that time, it was a cassette.
yeah, right.
And I had the cassette, and we choreographed a group piece to that by taking things from the duets. And so there was things, parts of it that we all did in a circle, and then there were parts of it that we did in general space with the duets overlapping, and that, it was like this whole piece. I guess I repeated the same score in the music maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times for the different segments of the dance. And yeah, it was, the whole dance was about the timing, which is amazing, right? Michael Richter,
That's what I'm saying. Like, how
that's what I
beautiful.
chose to offer people, right? Was this thing. And it was beautiful, and of course some of the dancers had some challenge with it, because some of the dancers were more, improvisatory, and not super, county kinds of, dancing with it. And others, it was super easy, based on who they were. But we kept with it, and I kept, playing with different ways of teaching it, and sometimes counting it, and sometimes the drum, and sometimes singing it, and all the things we would do
Yeah.
with a group of young dancers, the same stuff, but with them. And yeah, and it became like, this almost ritual, this dance of this very simple, first score in your move.
And I'm just going to point out again, right? You had that transformative experience of connecting with the music, right? You weren't thinking, I think I'm going to use this musicality insight to teach, right? It just became a part of you. And then here you go, it was one of your first big LOD projects, right? I mean, and it was timing. I mean, what a testament to when we are transformed through the work, that it just naturally, it's like you can't keep it from bubbling up. It will it will be there. um
It became part of me, and then if I'm offering myself, that's part of what I'm offering then. Exactly. And it then, I'm so glad you're highlighting this. It's then we don't have to work at giving the thing to our students. If we've had experiences that were transformative, that were joyful, that were community building, they're nourishing. And so then they're in us, and they're just there.
and then it also sounds like you had one score, right? So probably not many concepts, and yet and right, okay, so it was like action and stillness score with in time. That's a big deal. It's a big concept. But that you were able to generate these 8 weeks of an experience just based on that, like that quantity is not what matters here with this work.
That's right.
It's not about the most theory you can shove in somebody as quickly as possible, the better, right? It's really much more about how deep can we drill into making meaning with just a few tidbits of the theory component and how much can be accomplished. So I know that that was also a big pedagogical shift when we generated the foundations course, which I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit. But this idea of drilling down and is, I mean, is that true in your experience that less is more?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You said it so well, so well. And thank God we discovered that, because our old model that you and I went through, in the early and mid thousands, 2000s, right, was a very comprehensive of learning language of dance, with trying to just jam in as much as possible. And that's valuable, but it's so great that we've come up with the foundations model so that people can come in and start playing and creating and expressing and communicating,
Mm.
day one of an asynchronous course. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, people, they haven't even read a book, they haven't even come to a class, and they're in asynchronous first week and they're making beautiful dances on Flipgrid.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and they're happy and they're expressing and they're in summer and they're playing with dance instead of like being in a PD that feels like, oh my God, I'm not at the beach, on my summer break doing this. Like, they're
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I'm like doing a dance under my couch and on top of my couch. And my daughter is doing part of it. Or, I mean, and I'm happy and I'm sharing it on Flipgrid and finding depth of communication and expressivity and creativity in the language of dance structure that was so similar to what happened with that score in that research.
Yeah. And it admittedly, I was one of the ones I'm like, give me all the theory. I want to know it all and I can't get it fast enough, right? So, and I was able to consume a lot of theory very quickly. I mean, that's why my notation teacher recommended the course to me, right? Because I was like so hungry for it. Um so again, I happen to have thrived in the former model, right? And I'm one person, and that's great. And real quick, I learned that not everybody was going to consume it in the same way that I was going to consume it. And so what I had been so excited about in my own practice, like, look at all this amazing logical, analytical, mathematical thinking that I get to apply to my art form. This is so great, right? And I was thriving in it and I was notating things from the beginning, and it just was so much part of me. And then I would present it to somebody and I'd get this like quizzical look like, are you crazy? Like, how this is hieroglyphics to me. This is sort of thing, right? And so it was only then that I had to step back and say, oh, right, okay, we all learn differently. So there are those of us in the world who will be like, you know eat it up as fast as you possibly can. Admittedly, I've had to go back, right? And I keep going back and drilling down deeper. It's like you can only get so much breadth and depth in a time frame. There's only so much learning that can be had. But now I have a deep appreciation for taking time with fewer concepts so that it becomes a lived experience. It becomes um, uh, centered and focused and not scattered or diffuse in that regard. um, and and then really playing with different ways of making meaning, different ways of applying, different ways of exploring, different ways of returning to it until it just cycles back in on itself in this rejuvenating practice, right? And once you've gone through like the whole different cycle, you can just start again because it's like now you're a new person. And so every time you come to this concept, I experience it differently because I'm different. And so flexion and extension balance and fall means different now than it did when I was 20. Balance and falling and those mechanics are changing support and what's entailed with changing support. I know I didn't think too much. I'm on the ground, I'm standing, I'm on my knees, whatever, when my body was that way. And now I'm like, oh, now I see, now I see all this nuance and what transition does have to happen to make this change of support happen for me. So all of this is to say that I'm so glad that I was able to recognize, right, the differences in learning styles so that now we have these opportunities of learning like you described that get people moving sooner and dancing and applying sooner and feeling ownership of maybe fewer concepts in with the movement alphabet now has 12 that we identify, 12 to 14 depending on how you divide it out. But with 14 concepts, oh my gosh, there's so much you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I also was eating it up, the way it came in the stage courses. It worked for my learning style. It was it was just the right mix of academic and practice, and I got it all fast and enjoyed it. But there, I was in a stage one with, I don't know, 20, 30 people. And there
Mm.
were a lot of people that were struggling from the very, very beginning. And, and so I just decided I was a TA, and because I got it, super fast. And then I would just go and just put myself next to somebody and be like, let's figure this out, and let's just keep dancing it and playing with it and feeling it, and and that was great. And and I also remember, that was the only course I had Anne as one of my teachers, was just in stage one. And I do remember her saying, at one point, because she would ask questions, and I was happy and enthusiastic, because it was all so easy for me to,
Same.
finally, like finally something in dance that was easy, where
Yeah.
everything else had been like this huge struggle and challenge, and I might have been crying or something at the end, or who knows. And
Yeah.
this was, and I could just, I mean, my brain, it's the way my brain was
Yeah.
already wired. And so, I would be answering a lot of the questions she would ask, like instantly, and she finally said, "Michael, let's give some of the other students a chance," and it's like, oh my gosh, and so I mean, it was, I mean, absolutely right on. Um, but that's, when I realized, okay, yeah, this works for me because of me and my past life experience as a learner.
Mhm.
And I can tone it way down and
Mhm.
become in service to the whole community, with my facility with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I did. And I am the last one of the people who that old model worked for, and the only one from my generation. And so the three of you, Beth, Susan, and Teresa, were together.
We were.
And a big part of LODC is the community of learners and teachers. It's
Mhm.
not really just the work, it's really the people who
Yeah.
are attracted to the work and who are in it, who happen to be, just these, gorgeous, loving, amazing people that you want to be with them,
Yeah.
right? You want to be a part of it. And so that is a part of it. And you all, had each other as well as the content. And, for me, all my peers that I had, who were as gorgeous and amazing and brilliant and creative as you all,
Yeah.
just couldn't keep it happening, you
Mhm.
know. And even for me, it took years, but I did it. And and then I said, well, if they're not here, I'm gonna worm my way in with you three, which,
We welcomed you
you
in with
welcomed
open
me.
arms.
Exactly. You totally welcomed me. And now I love that the new generations have so much more diversity of the kinds of people who are becoming master practitioners and
Mhm.
teacher trainers, because we did make a change and change to foundations and master practitioner instead of that other way, so that it's really developmental and super scaffolded, and so much mentoring support.
Mhm.
And now we're going to add even fundamentals as something before the foundations level, so it's going to be even more developmental and even more scaffolded. And it just means that it becomes accessible to so many kinds of learners, so many kinds of dancers, so many kinds of educators. And our community becomes all the more richer and more loving and lovable and more creative, and I'm just thrilled.
So yeah, it is exactly, and like this shift in thinking, and you mentioned it earlier in this little talk you were talking about, and then Miss Beth spends 10 minutes on introducing these concepts, and then we go back to this model of seeing and doing and exploring, and the transformational process that if we didn't wait until we were all adults to enter into this work. And I think Anne Hutchinson Guest's vision with the work was to start early so that a notation practice could be cultivated over the course of dance study gradually. And it didn't have to be an all or nothing commitment to this world. but it's something that tracks through as you are gaining other dance skills, so that the dance literacy is whole dance literacy, social, emotional, physical, aesthetic, cognitive, all fused together with a written documentation system that provides different evidence of this art form, right? In addition to the dance performing and making and process. So I know that New York, I've talked with the other, previous episodes were Corazon Tierra and Rachel Werman. They're both in New York, which has a very established, I mean, Rachel was talking about the origins of the Department of Education for the city of New York and dance as part of that. Dance's origin story inside of that. And Corazon is again a product and has lots of experience as a certified dance educator within that system, and that I was describing how it's the Wild West out here in California, where we've just put in place our dance credentialing system again after having a hiatus of 30 years due to some legal stuff, and so we're just getting like this momentum to transform how dance education can be in our school system, in our K through 12 system, and also how dance education can be a profession within the public school system. So and as part of that, there's some credentialing programs that are happening, and one is this, we call it the CTE program, which is the Career Technical Education Program for Arts and Media and Entertainment, which of course being in LA is like huge. And I know that there's opportunity and some educators here in California who are fostering that, working with the California Dance Education Association and trying to foster that CTE program and incorporating LOD. And you've been working with them. Can you tell a little bit about maybe what could be happening here in California on the West Coast for those of us who are on this side of the Americas?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because it's really exciting actually because there's never been a dance CTE certification. Uh, that's there have been like little smaller certificates in like some specific skill from a specific dance company that does a residency and something like that. But we're actually looking at a 1 to 2 year certification for high school dance students in the fundamentals of language of dance or language of dance fundamentals. And it's really exciting. We're working with these, great dance educators, Kim Hoy and Nicole Robinson, who are both in Southern California. And both are foundations grads and love LOD. And they saw a need for a certification that could be accessible to everyone as whatever kind of dancer you are. So the
That's the
kinds of,
hiccup.
you know,
Whatever kind of dancer you are.
right, the kinds of certifications that they had been experimenting with were usually technique based, possibly ballet based, uh,
Mhm.
different possibilities, and yeah, they're working with that, but that's not a certification that's for everybody.
Right.
You know, that's a certification who is for a small sector of dancers. And language of dance will be something that can be a certification for everyone because it's a holistic, whole person, cognitive, social, emotional, uh, intellectual certification.
Yeah.
And uh, you could be a dancer in a wheelchair. You could be a dancer who is, hard of hearing. You could be a dancer who's entering the field in their late 20s. And this certification will be accessible and meaningful
Mhm.
in a way that a Vaganova or Royal Academy of Dance technique certification is not
Yeah.
appropriate. And for that particular dancer. And for those dancers, it's appropriate as well because it gives their resume this whole other side to it. So that when it comes down to two gorgeous dancers for the same job, whether it's in performance, choreography, education, or research, the one who has the language of dance fundamentals certification as well, and shows that they have the intellectual understanding of the conceptual part of dance as well as the gorgeous technique or gorgeous creative process,
Mhm.
is going to be the one who gets that job. So it's going to be meaningful in the Los Angeles community
Mhm.
that students have this. And you know, it's great for them for continuing with the Language of Dance Center because they'll easily get into the whole foundations curriculum and the master practitioner, and they can, you know, easily continue with the Language of Dance Center USA. But even if they don't, it's exciting that they're having something that will really affect their um, eligibility for more jobs in terms of education, performance, choreography, and research.
Yeah,
And you know, it's just it's really exciting. And you know, we're now starting a pilot, and
cool.
we're having, you know, it's open to all California teachers who can commit to coming to summer foundations, and then can commit to some curriculum writing online workshops throughout this coming school year.
And
So
that's happening for this year,
that's
right?
happening right now. So you can sign
Okay.
up. You can go to the LODCUSA.org website, and you'll see when our foundations courses are in July. They're all online. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can do it. And then the follow up for curriculum writing will also be online.
Okay.
And it's really exciting because the foundations courses are professional development, but they're super fun and super
Yeah.
creative, super community building, as you well know, because you've taught them. And then that is the base for then beginning to experiment with your students as to how you want to apply it to your high school students, is then the process for arriving at a curriculum that then will be part of this fundamentals of language of dance certification for the high school students. So it's really looking at a 2-year pilot, a first year of piloting in curriculum writing, and then a second year of actually saying, let's certify some students.
Okay, so let's say if I were a high school teacher and I have an established program, maybe I have a CTE pathway, but maybe I don't, right? Would I then like email you, or if I email the LODC and then it will kind of get through the channels? Okay, so yeah, any high
Yeah,
school
email me.
teachers,
I'm Michael Richter. So my email is mrichter@lodcusa.org. I believe we
yeah,
are. Or, you know, you can email Beth
I'll put the
also,
notes in the,
or, you know, Susan Jean Grass. So anyone at LODC
yeah.
USA knows about this project
Mhm.
and is super excited about it and can, you know, figure it out how to help you get what you need so that your school district can maybe give you funding toward the foundation's courses.
Yeah.
You know, school districts, I think, are very excited to support this kind of professional development because it really is about accessibility for all, and it is about cognitive, social, emotional development. So it's really things that are important to school
Mhm.
boards, to administrators, to principals. And I think based on past years of foundations,
Mhm.
high school dance students, dance teachers have been successful at getting funding from their schools to take
Mhm.
foundations. So, you know, when we can help you with getting the information you need to show your administrators, and it's just super fun. You know, it's just so fun to be dancing with, you know, bright, creative people from all over the world. You know,
Yeah, I think there are already students enrolled from
Brazil.
Brazil
Yeah.
and Korea, I
Oh
think.
yeah, good. Yeah.
So so I guess my what I want to just seal up with is this, my in my experience, the LOD having dance notation is so functional within my own work, right? And it's become a huge part of my company work with Megill and Company, and obviously different projects that have fueled me, and pedagogical curriculum development. I mean, it's like all of that, right, in my life. But the people who seem the most impressed are people outside of dance, people who otherwise continue to perceive dance as fun, And unfortunately, dance is fun. I'm like, well, it is fun, but it's not just fun, right? Like it's so much more than that. And so whenever I'm speaking to uh, arts faculty outside of dance, or administrators, or my administrative managers, or school boards, or other arts organizations, things shift when I talk about notation as part of the evidence of learning, right?
Yeah. And
Or
that's fortunate and unfortunate,
it's
right?
fortunate and unfortunate. So, like, it's one of those, dance doesn't have to have notation to be dance at all. Um, and if it's going to be a way for me to facilitate its accessibility and its ability to meet the needs for equity and diversity in the arts, then yes, let's talk about it, and let's let administrators know, and other arts faculty know what is happening, what can happen in a dance classroom, because it's powerful, and it perks people up in a different way, for better for worse, like you said. Like you said.
Yeah. It would be great if the world understood the value of dance without having to have dance notation to help them do that.
Mm-hmm.
But based on, so many years of different, of a particular cultural lens
Mm-hmm.
that has said that the cognitive is the most valuable, that still exists. Well, language of dance is the cognitive part of dance. It is. It's really understanding the concepts and what you're doing in a very cognitive way, and that's what the academe has been built upon.
Mm-hmm.
So it may not be the whole picture by any means, but it's a part of the picture, and it's one that many of us are living in. So, for now, it makes sense to accept it and go with it, because dance is all kinds of ways of knowing that aren't cognitive. And that's what's the beauty of it. But if the cognitive is the way that we get our foot into doors where we should be and haven't been, let's go for it with language of dance.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the flip, and we know, like, to me, once I get in that room, that, first thing, right? Sensing and exploring. Like, we return to this physicality of it, and then that becomes, it is the heartbeat of it. And, so, yeah, well, I'm super excited to see that this fundamentals curriculum, this material, if it starts in high school, right, then the developmental application can be guided and harnessed and um, facilitated to meet any dance artist's needs, practical versus getting into education, or artistic, or whatever they envision for themselves. The earlier the earlier we know it's available, the sooner we can access it. And
Yeah,
I still have so many dancers. I've danced my whole life. I never knew there was notation. I'm like, why would you if you've never been exposed?
yeah, yeah. And at what age do we start teaching music notation to young musicians? We start in elementary school.
Oh, no, before that, you buy a
Yeah,
baby toy, it will have a music note on it.
yeah. So it's not like this is so brand new to think about doing this.
No,
It is in dance, right?
right.
But I mean, people have been learning quarter notes and half notes and eighth notes in kindergarten for at least 5, 6, 7 decades. That's part of the music curriculum in kindergarten and first grade. And rests and the names of the notes, and I mean, that's been there for
Mhm.
a long, long time. So we're not really, you know doing something so novel. It's novel in dance. It
Right.
is
It's
novel in
not,
dance. But
it's
in the
novel.
arts, in performing arts in general, music has been doing that in music education, for a very long time.
Yeah. It's a great point. And the truth is, just like music education, not every student's going to want to walk through the door of the music classroom just because they've seen a note on a, little toy piano. But those who are drawn to it know it's there. It's like the door is open. And um so I think that's my interest. Like, it's okay. Not everybody has to dig it. Like, that's okay. But as long as everybody knows that the door is open to them, should they want to walk through, whether now or later, or you know, much later in life, that it's always accessible. And the invitation is
And different parts of it speak to different people in different ways, and that's beautiful too. Is you don't have to love the whole of language of dance to say, oh my gosh, this really works for me in my style of teaching, or this works for me in my style of dancing, or this works for me in my style of choreographing.
Mhm.
You don't have to, you pick and choose the things that are going to support your practice. There are people that do a lot with language of dance. The thing that they love is stillness. That there's this whole concept of stillness and this whole thing. Like, that's what they love. It's stillness. And that's like the thing that hooks them and that they want to keep going back to. It's like, great. Run with stillness, research stillness, perform stillness, talk about stillness, write books about stillness. And we have many people that have done that.
I
And
know.
I mean, it's like, so it's, it's not saying like, you have to do LOD in every way, in everything. You are a dance artist who has, a tool bag with at least 100 tools that you use to show up and dance and choreograph and teach. LOD is another one of them that you put in there, and you take the pieces of out when they serve you to give clarity and stimulation and motivation and inspiration.
Yeah, I had a great example of that. I was teaching the language of dance course for the National Dance Educators Organization, NDEO, and I had a student who is a guru in classical Indian dance. Now, when I developed that course, I had a contemporary dance lens. Specifically, I chose a contemporary dance lens because I was thinking, oh, okay, let me think what might be the most applicable to like current trends. And at the time, it was still, we still are riding that wave of like, so you think you can dance energy of, contemporary. And so part of in that curriculum, I included balance and falling. Well, my student said, we don't do that. We don't fall. That's not in our vocabulary. Like the way that cultural heritage has developed, the center of gravity is always right over the support. And so it was just such a beautiful moment of revealing how much the lens of the work shapes it, and that people are going to gravitate toward, but they're going to gravitate and use what they need. So for that little module, I'm like, well, play with it and see what would be interest. And what a beautiful thing to note now, to really like solidify about honoring this art form, that we are not interested in your center of gravity moving beyond your base of support. Cool. We know it now, and so, and then other elements, including body parts and different body part articulations, were so applicable to his world, and maybe not as much to some of the other students in the class. So it was just a nice example um, of honoring the heritage and value set of a given dance form, and knowing that it doesn't have to be everything for everybody, and that the beauty of that. So again, it holds the space for diversity in application and usage and practice. And so anyway, that was it just reminded me when you were talking about, people have dedicated so much time to stillness, and some dance forms are never still.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah, and and we don't, and when we think about people who come to dance, we think about them coming to dance because they want to move. That was, I mean, that was why I was giving that example, because it seems so counterintuitive
Yeah.
also, but it's not, because that's where they found magic, and that's where their spirit, got ignited. And so, that's what they wanted to go deeper into. And great, and then they open that up for all of us to see more depth there. And that's the great thing about language of dance now, is that it's this very live, living, changing, breathing language. It's not Latin, it's not ancient Greek. I mean, it's something that people are playing with every day, and saying, I need a new symbol for this.
Yeah.
I need a new way to communicate this. I need a new way to notate this. I need alternatives here. And, and then that's super fun. I've been in meetings with you and Susan Gingrasso, or Teresa Hyland or Tina Curran or what have you, where we're like, okay, here's a student need. How can we help support that with giving symbology that speaks to what they want? And that is very special. There are not a lot of systems in language or in dance
Mhm.
that adapt themselves to community needs.
Yeah.
There just aren't, and there are some, but they're few and far between. And that's something that we really need to cherish and support, and value, because that's a value about the people. And that's really the key in language of dance. It matters who's there and
Mhm.
what dances they're dancing.
Yeah.
It's not me putting on a dance onto you. And that's what was different from my origin story, of that, here I showed up to these people's classes and they're putting their dance on me in every class after class after class. And it's like, okay, that's your dance, but maybe that's not my dance, And language of dance is actually responding to the needs of the people who are in the community. And I feel like that's a reflection of love. Like, that's actually seeing that other person, the dance they want to make or want to perform, and how do we give them the language to support that?
Yeah, honoring and celebrating their contributions, their spontaneous, you know, motivations, impulses to make and to move. Well, this we are at time, Michael. This has
Yeah.
been a treat. Love it. So fun. And you are leading the Foundations One this summer. So if people want to work with you specifically, they should look for the Foundations One course. You can take the courses in order or out of order. Just want to remind people who might be interested in that curriculum. And there's an asynchronous and a synchronous component, and it's quite flexible, trying to meet everyone's needs. As they can, and to make the most out of a summer of creativity and inspiration and hope. So, thank you so much, Michael. It has been a treat. Grasping contact.
Thank you so much, Beth. I love what we got to explore together. And yeah, I hope that we keep getting to explore together in more amazing language of dance opportunities over the years to come.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.